Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. The helicopter blades tore through the thin mountain air, casting long shadows over the crimson sandstone cliffs of southeastern Utah. Inside, Detective Sarah Vaughn gripped the armrest, her knuckles white as bone. Below her, the Manti La Salle National Forest stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of ponderosa pines, jagged ravines, and unmarked trails that swallowed hikers whole. It was October 14, 2019, and somewhere in that vast wilderness, a young woman had vanished without a trace. Her name was Emma Caldwell. 26 years old, marine biology graduate student, adventure blogger with over 80,000 followers. 3 days earlier, she had posted a selfie on Instagram from the trailhead of the dark canyon wilderness, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, her smile bright against the autumn sun. The caption read, "Going off-grid for a few days. If you don't hear from me, send a search party." She added a winking emoji. Her followers thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Emma never returned to her campsite. Her rental car, a white Toyota RAV4, was found abandoned at the trailhead parking area, keys still in the ignition. Her tent was discovered 2 miles into the backcountry, perfectly set up, sleeping bag neatly rolled, but no sign of Emma. Her backpack, phone, and wallet were gone. What made investigators' blood run cold was what they found inside the tent, a torn piece of paper with 3 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "He found me." Detective Vaughn had seen her share of missing persons cases in rural Utah, but something about this one felt different. The terrain was unforgiving, sure, but Emma was an experienced hiker. She had summited peaks across 3 continents. She knew how to handle herself in the wilderness. And yet, she had left behind a message that suggested she wasn't lost. She was running. The search and rescue operation had been underway for 72 hours. Dozens of volunteers combed the forest, K-9 units tracked scent trails that led nowhere, and drones captured aerial footage of endless trees and rock formations. Nothing. Emma Caldwell had seemingly evaporated into the Utah backcountry. Back at the makeshift command center, a converted ranger station near the trailhead, Vaughn stood over a table cluttered with maps, photographs, and interview transcripts. Across from her was Ranger Tom Holloway, a weathered man in his 50s who had worked these mountains for 20 years. He tapped a calloused finger on the map. "This area," he said, circling a section marked Dark Canyon Plateau, "is some of the most remote terrain in the lower 48. Cell service is non-existent. If she went off-trail, we're talking about hundreds of square miles of wilderness. Rattlesnakes, mountain lions, flash floods. People die out here every year." Vaughn studied the map, then looked up at the ranger. "What about the note?" "He found me." "Who's he?" Holloway shrugged. "Could be anyone. Or no one. Maybe she was scared, disoriented. People do strange things when they're panicking." But Vaughn didn't buy it. Emma's social media history painted a picture of a confident, cautious woman. Her posts were meticulous, her gear top of the line. She wasn't the type to panic. Vaughn pulled out her phone and scrolled through Emma's Instagram feed, searching for anything out of place. The photos were stunning: alpine lakes, desert sunsets, mountain peaks. But as she scrolled further back, she noticed something. In several recent posts, there was a figure in the background. Always distant, never in focus. A man in a dark jacket, standing near trailheads, watching. Vaughn zoomed in on one photo from 2 weeks earlier, taken at Arches National Park. The man was there again, half hidden behind a rock formation. She showed the image to Holloway. "Recognize him?" Holloway squinted at the screen, then shook his head. "Could be any hiker. This is a popular area." "Not just any hiker," Vaughn said, swiping to another photo. "He's in this one too. And this one. Different locations, different dates. Always in the background. Always watching." The ranger's expression darkened. "You think she was being stalked? I think we need to find out who this man is." Within hours, Vaughn's team had circulated the photos to local law enforcement and park rangers across Utah. Meanwhile, forensic techs combed through Emma's tent, searching for DNA, fingerprints, anything that might point to a suspect. They found something else instead: a second phone, a cheap burner model tucked inside a hidden pocket of Emma's sleeping bag. It was password protected, but the tech team cracked it within minutes. The phone contained dozens of text messages, all from an unknown number. The messages started innocuous: compliments on Emma's blog, questions about her favorite hiking spots. But they quickly turned obsessive. "I see you're going to Zion this weekend. I'll be there too. You looked beautiful in that red jacket yesterday. Why are you ignoring me? I thought we had something special." The final message, sent the night before Emma disappeared, was chilling. "You can't hide from me anymore. I'll always find you." Vaughn felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This wasn't a missing hiker. This was an abduction. Maybe worse. She immediately ordered a trace on the burner number. It came back to a prepaid SIM card purchased at a gas station in Moab, Utah, 3 months earlier. The station's surveillance footage was grainy, but it showed a man in his 30s, medium build, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He paid in cash. No name, no credit card trail. A ghost. As the investigation intensified, Vaughn and her team began interviewing people from Emma's life. Her roommate in Salt Lake City described her as adventurous but private, someone who kept her personal life close to the chest. Her ex-boyfriend, a software engineer named Kyle Morrison, had an alibi. He was in Seattle for a tech conference the week Emma went missing. Her parents, devastated and desperate, knew nothing about a stalker. Emma had never mentioned feeling unsafe. But then, a break. A hiking couple came forward, claiming they had seen Emma on the morning of October 12, 2 days before she vanished. She was arguing with a man near the trailhead. The couple couldn't hear the conversation, but Emma looked upset, and the man was gesturing aggressively. When the couple approached, the man walked away quickly, disappearing into the forest. They described him as mid-30s, dark hair, wearing a green jacket and hiking boots. The description matched the figure in Emma's photos. Vaughn released a sketch of the suspect to the media. Within 24 hours, tips flooded in. A bartender in Moab recognized him as a regular, someone who asked a lot of questions about solo female hikers. A park ranger remembered seeing him at multiple trailheads over the past few months, always alone, always watching. But no one knew his name. Then, on the 5th day of the search, a hiker stumbled upon something in a remote section of the canyon, nearly 10 miles from Emma's campsite. It was a backpack, partially buried under leaves and branches. Inside were Emma's wallet, her phone, and a journal. The last entry was dated October 12, the day she disappeared. It read, "I think I made a terrible mistake. I agreed to meet him. I thought if I confronted him, he would leave me alone. But now I'm not so sure. If something happens to me, his name is..." The sentence ended there, the pen trailing off the page. But when forensic experts examined the journal under UV light, they found something else. Faint impressions on the page beneath, words pressed so hard they left an imprint. They carefully reconstructed the message. It said, "David Harmon. He won't let me go." Vaughn ran the name through every database available. And there he was. David Harmon, 34 years old, former military, dishonorable discharge for stalking a fellow soldier. Multiple restraining orders from women in 3 states. Last known address, Moab, Utah. But when police raided his apartment, they found it empty. Cleared out. No furniture, no personal belongings, nothing. Just a wall covered in photographs of Emma. Hundreds of them. Close-ups, candid shots, images taken with a telephoto lens. And in the center of the wall, a map of dark canyon wilderness. With a single red pin marking a location deep in the forest. Vaughn stared at the map, her pulse pounding. They had a name. They had a suspect. And now, they had a destination. She assembled a tactical team and prepared to head into the canyon at first light. But as she turned to leave, she noticed something else on the wall. A note, handwritten, taped beside the map. It said, "You'll never find her in time." The tactical team moved through dark canyon like shadows at dawn, their boots crunching softly on the frost-covered ground. Detective Sarah Vaughn led the group, her breath forming white clouds in the cold October air. Behind her, 6 armed officers and 2 tracking dogs navigated the narrow game trail that wound deeper into the wilderness. The red pin on David Harmon's map had marked a location nearly 15 miles from the trailhead, in a section of the canyon so remote that even experienced rangers rarely ventured there. The sun had barely crested the canyon walls when they reached the coordinates. What they found made Vaughn's stomach turn. Nestled in a small clearing, hidden beneath a canopy of Douglas firs, was a crude campsite. A canvas tarp stretched between trees, a fire pit filled with cold ash, and scattered around the perimeter were items that clearly belonged to Emma, a hiking boot, a torn piece of her jacket, a water bottle with her initials scratched into the metal. But Emma wasn't there. And neither was David Harmon. One of the K9 handlers released his dog, a German shepherd named Rex, who immediately picked up a scent trail leading away from the camp. The dog pulled hard on the leash, barking urgently as he followed the trail north, toward a steep ravine that dropped nearly 200 feet into a rocky gorge below. Vaughn's radio crackled to life. It was Ranger Holloway, back at the command center. "Detective, we just got something. Harmon's truck was spotted at a gas station in Blanding, about 40 miles northeast of your position. Surveillance footage shows him filling up 30 minutes ago. He was alone. Vaughn's mind raced. If Harmon was 40 miles away, where was Emma? Was she still alive? Had he left her somewhere, or was this campsite just another cruel game, another dead end in his twisted hunt? Keep all units on alert, Vaughn said into the radio. If he's on the move, I want every road between here and the state line covered. And get me his vehicle description. Already done. Black Ford F-150, Utah plates. Units are mobilizing now. Vaughn followed Rex and the handler down a treacherous slope, using tree roots and rocks for handholds. The ravine was deeper than it looked from above, and the temperature dropped with every step. At the bottom, a narrow stream cut through the gorge, its water ice-cold and crystal clear. Rex stopped at the water's edge and began barking frantically, pawing at something half-submerged in the shallow current. Vaughn's heart sank. She waded into the stream, the frigid water soaking through her boots, and reached for what the dog had found. It was a jacket, Emma's jacket, the same red one she had been wearing in her Instagram photos. Vaughn pulled it from the water and examined it carefully. There was no blood, no tears, just the jacket, waterlogged and heavy. But tucked into the inside pocket was something that made Vaughn's blood run cold, a smartphone, sealed in a waterproof case. Emma's smartphone. The one that had been missing since she disappeared. The tech team back at Command Center worked frantically to extract data from the water-damaged device. Despite the waterproof case, the phone had suffered some corruption, but they managed to recover recent files. What they found was a series of voice memos, recorded in the days leading up to Emma's disappearance. Vaughn listened to them through her earpiece as she stood in that freezing gorge, and with each recording, the horror deepened. The first memo was dated October 10th, 2 days before Emma vanished. Her voice was calm but tense. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but I keep seeing the same guy everywhere I go. Dark hair, green jacket, always about 50 yards behind me. I've changed trails 3 times, and he's still there. I'm starting to think this isn't a coincidence. The second memo, October 11th, Emma's voice was shakier now. He approached me today at the parking lot. Said his name was David, said he's been following my blog for months. He knew details about my life that I've never posted online. He knew where I went to college, where my parents live, even my sister's name. I told him to leave me alone, but he just smiled. He said we were meant to meet, that the universe brought us together. I'm scared. I'm thinking about canceling this trip, but I don't want to let fear control my life. I've worked too hard to let some creep take this away from me. The third memo, October 12th, the day she disappeared. Emma was whispering now, her voice barely audible over the sound of wind. I made a mistake. I agreed to meet him this morning because I thought if I confronted him face to face, in a public place, he would understand that I'm not interested and leave me alone. But when I got to the meeting spot, he wasn't alone. There was another man with him, someone he called his brother. They said they wanted to show me something, a hidden waterfall off the main trail. I said no, but they kept insisting, kept pressuring me. I finally agreed just to get them to stop, but now we've been hiking for over an hour and I don't recognize where we are anymore. I'm trying to drop markers, anything to leave a trail. If you're hearing this, I'm in trouble. His name is David Harmon. Please, someone, find me. The recording ended abruptly. Vaughn's hands were shaking as she pulled the earpiece out. A brother. Harmon had a brother. The investigation had focused solely on David, but they had been hunting the wrong prey. Or rather, only half of it. Back at Command Center, Vaughn's team tore through David Harmon's records. And there it was, buried in military files. David had a younger brother, Marcus Harmon, age 31. Marcus had no criminal record, no history of violence. Nothing to flag him as a suspect. He worked as a freelance photographer in Moab, specializing in landscape and nature photography. On the surface, he was invisible, unremarkable. But when investigators searched his social media accounts, they found his portfolio. And mixed in with stunning shots of Utah's desert landscapes were hundreds of candid photographs of women. Solo female hikers, campers, climbers. All taken with a telephoto lens. All taken without their knowledge. And there, in the center of Marcus Harmon's online portfolio, was a photograph of Emma Caldwell, taken 3 months earlier at Canyonlands National Park. She was sitting on a rock, drinking water, completely unaware she was being watched. The photo was titled, Perfect. Vaughn immediately issued warrants for both brothers. Every law enforcement agency in the Four Corners region was mobilized. Roadblocks went up on every major highway. Border Patrol was alerted. The brothers were now the most wanted men in Utah. But as the manhunt intensified, something strange happened. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a call came into the tip line. A woman's voice, breathless and terrified, but unmistakably alive. My name is Emma Caldwell. I'm alive. I'm trapped. Please, you have to find me before they come back. The call lasted only 12 seconds before the line went dead. The tech team traced it to a cell tower near the town of Bluff, Utah, about 60 miles from Dark Canyon. But the signal was weak, pinging off multiple towers, making it impossible to pinpoint an exact location. Vaughn and her team raced toward Bluff, sirens screaming. If Emma was alive and had access to a phone, it meant she had escaped, or was being held somewhere with enough freedom to make a call. But it also meant the brothers knew she had contacted police. They would be desperate now, unpredictable. As they approached Bluff, a small desert town with a population barely over 300, Vaughn received another update. Local police had located Marcus Harmon's truck parked behind an abandoned mining facility on the outskirts of town. The building was a relic from the uranium boom of the 1950s, a concrete bunker surrounded by rusted equipment and warning signs about radiation. It had been closed for decades. Vaughn and her team surrounded the facility. Through the scope of her rifle, she could see movement inside one of the shattered windows. A figure, darting between shadows. The tactical team moved in, clearing room by room. The air inside was thick with dust and the metallic smell of decay. And then, in the basement level, they found her. Emma Caldwell was chained to a support beam in the corner of a windowless room. She was alive, but barely. Dehydrated, bruised, her wrists raw from the restraints. When she saw Vaughn, she broke down, sobbing with relief. Medics rushed in, cutting the chains, wrapping her in thermal blankets. But as they carried Emma out of that nightmare, Vaughn noticed something that sent ice through her veins. On the wall beside where Emma had been chained, scratched into the concrete with something sharp, were 3 words: "She wasn't first." Vaughn spun around, her weapon raised, scanning the shadows. Where are they? Where are the brothers? Emma looked up at her, tears streaming down her face. They left an hour ago. Marcus said they had to tie up loose ends. David said something about finishing what they started. She paused, her voice breaking. They kept talking about another woman. Someone named Rachel. They said she was still out there, waiting. Vaughn's blood turned to ice. Another victim. Somewhere in this vast wilderness, another woman was being hunted. And the Harmon brothers were already on their way to find her. As medics loaded Emma into an ambulance, Vaughn grabbed her radio. "All units, we have a second potential victim. Name is Rachel, last name unknown. I need every missing persons report from the last 6 months cross-referenced with solo female hikers in Utah. Move now." Within minutes, the database returned a match. Rachel Donovan, 29 years old, reported missing 7 weeks earlier from Capitol Reef National Park. She had been hiking the Cassidy Arch Trail and never returned. Search efforts had been called off after 2 weeks when no evidence was found. Everyone assumed she had fallen into a crevasse or been taken by wildlife. But now, Vaughn knew the truth. Rachel Donovan hadn't fallen. She had been taken. And if the Harmon brothers were going back for her, it meant she was still alive. Still waiting. Still hoping for rescue. Vaughn looked at the map spread across the hood of her vehicle. Capitol Reef was 90 miles northwest. She had maybe 2 hours before the brothers reached Rachel, if she was even still there. But as she prepared to mobilize her team, her phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. She opened it, and her heart stopped. It was a photograph, taken just moments ago based on the metadata. It showed a woman, bound and gagged, sitting in what appeared to be a cave. Behind her stood 2 men, their faces obscured by shadows. And beneath the photo, a message: "Catch us if you can, detective. The game isn't over yet." Detective Sarah Vaughn's convoy tore through the desert highway, red and blue lights cutting through the gathering dusk. Capitol Reef National Park loomed ahead, its massive stone formations rising like ancient sentinels against the darkening sky. Vaughn's mind raced faster than the speedometer. The Harmon brothers had Rachel Donovan, and they knew the police were coming. This wasn't just a rescue operation anymore. It was a trap. She radioed ahead to park rangers, demanding every piece of information about cave systems in the Capitol Reef area. There were dozens, maybe hundreds of hidden alcoves, slot canyons, and prehistoric shelters carved into the Navajo sandstone. The brothers could be anywhere. But then, at 6:47 in the evening, another text arrived on Vaughn's phone. This time, it was a video. 23 seconds long. It showed Rachel Donovan, dirty and terrified but alive, sitting against a stone wall. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she was breathing, conscious. Behind the camera, a man's voice spoke, calm and measured. "Detective Vaughn, by now you've probably figured out that we're smarter than you gave us credit for. My brother and I have been doing this for a long time. Emma wasn't the first. Rachel won't be the last. But here's the thing, we're tired of running. So let's make a deal. Come alone to the Hickman Bridge trailhead. No backup, no helicopters, no tricks. You have 1 hour. If we see anyone else, Rachel dies. If you're late, Rachel dies. And detective, we'll be watching. The video ended. Vaughn slammed her fist against the dashboard. Every instinct screamed that this was suicide, walking into an ambush alone. But Rachel Donovan's life hung in the balance, and the brothers had proven they would kill without hesitation. Ranger Holloway's voice crackled over the radio. Detective, you can't seriously be considering this. It's a setup. They'll kill you both. Vaughn stared at the dark road ahead, her jaw set. Get a tactical team to the area, but keep them back, out of sight. Give me a wire, thermal imaging if you can get it, and have medical on standby. I'm going in, but I'm not going in blind. 38 minutes later, Vaughn stood alone at the Hickman Bridge trailhead. The parking lot was empty except for her vehicle. The sun had set completely now, and the desert was swallowed by darkness. She wore a thin wire under her jacket, and somewhere a mile back, her team waited with night vision equipment and sniper rifles. But out here, in the vastness of the canyon, she felt utterly alone. Her phone buzzed. A text with coordinates and a single word, walk. Vaughn clicked on her flashlight and started up the trail. The Hickman Bridge Trail was a popular daytime hike, a 2-mile loop that passed under a massive natural stone arch. But at night, it transformed into something primordial and menacing. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified in the silence. She walked for 20 minutes, following the coordinates, until she reached a fork in the trail. Another text, left. Keep going. The path narrowed, becoming less maintained, more treacherous. Vaughn's boots slipped on loose scree as she climbed higher into the canyon. And then, just as the coordinates indicated she was close, her flashlight beam caught something ahead. A cave entrance, partially hidden behind a rockfall. And standing at the entrance, silhouetted against the faint glow of a lantern from within, was a man. David Harmon. Vaughn recognized him instantly from the sketch. He was tall, lean, with dark hair and a face that might have been handsome if not for the cold, dead look in his eyes. He held a hunting knife in one hand, the blade catching the light. Detective Vaughn, he said, his voice eerily calm. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Vaughn's hand moved toward her holstered weapon, but David raised the knife. I wouldn't. My brother is inside with Rachel. Any sudden moves, and he'll cut her throat before you can blink. Vaughn froze. Let her go, David. This is between you and me now. You've made your point. You're smarter than everyone thought. You've evaded capture for months. But it's over. Let Rachel go, and we can talk. David laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Talk? You think I want to talk? You have no idea what this is about, do you? He gestured with the knife toward the cave entrance. Come inside, detective. Let me show you what you've really stumbled into. Every fiber of Vaughn's being screamed danger, but she had no choice. She stepped forward, ducking under the low cave entrance. Inside, the space opened into a natural chamber about 20 feet across. Lanterns hung from rock protrusions, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And there, in the center, tied to a metal stake driven into the cave floor, was Rachel Donovan. She looked worse than Emma had. Thinner, more broken, her clothes in tatters. But her eyes were alert, defiant. She had survived 7 weeks of captivity through sheer will. Standing beside Rachel was the second brother, Marcus Harmon. He was shorter than David, stockier, with a scraggly beard and manic energy. He held a revolver pointed directly at Rachel's head. Welcome to our gallery, David said, stepping in behind Vaughn, blocking the exit. He gestured to the cave walls, and Vaughn's stomach dropped. The walls were covered in photographs. Dozens of them. Women hiking, camping, climbing. Some Vaughn recognized from missing persons reports. Others she had never seen. And beneath each photograph was a date and a location. 14 women over 4 years, David said, his voice almost proud. Emma and Rachel were just the most recent. The others? Well, let's just say the desert keeps its secrets. Vaughn felt bile rise in her throat. You're confessing to 14 murders? Marcus laughed, a high-pitched, unstable sound. Murders? No. We're hunters, detective. This is what we do. It's in our blood. Our father taught us to hunt when we were kids. Deer, elk, mountain lions. But those became boring. Predictable. We needed something more challenging. Something that could think, plan, fight back. You're sick, Vaughn said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. Both of you. But this ends tonight. David moved closer, the knife still in his hand. Does it? Because from where I'm standing, you're outnumbered, outgunned, and nobody knows exactly where you are. We've thought this through, detective. This cave has 3 exits. By the time your backup finds us, we'll be long gone. And Rachel here will be dead, along with you. But David Harmon had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated Sarah Vaughn. And he had underestimated Rachel Donovan. As David moved closer, Vaughn saw Rachel's eyes flick toward a rock near her feet, then back to Vaughn. A signal. Rachel had been working on her bonds, loosening them over hours, maybe days. She was ready. Vaughn made her move. She lunged forward, not at David, but at Marcus, knowing he was the more unstable of the two, the more likely to panic. She crashed into him just as he pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, but the bullet went wide, ricocheting off stone. In the same instant, Rachel broke free from her loosened restraints and grabbed the rock, smashing it into Marcus's knee. He screamed, dropping the revolver. Vaughn scooped it up and spun toward David just as he rushed at her with the knife. She fired once. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He collapsed against the cave wall, the knife clattering to the ground. Marcus tried to run for one of the exits, but Rachel tackled him, years of rage and survival instinct exploding in a single moment. She pinned him down as Vaughn rushed over, handcuffs already out. Within minutes, the cave was flooded with tactical officers, medics, and FBI agents. The wire Vaughn had worn had transmitted everything, and the moment shots were fired, her team had moved in. The brothers were taken into custody, both injured but alive. They would face trial for 14 counts of kidnapping and murder. Rachel Donovan was carried out on a stretcher, but she was conscious, gripping Vaughn's hand as they emerged from the cave into the cool desert night. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up." Vaughn squeezed her hand. "You saved yourself, Rachel. You survived." Over the following weeks, the FBI excavated the surrounding area based on coordinates found in the brothers' phones and journals. They recovered the remains of 11 women, each one a victim of the Harmon Brothers' twisted hunting game. 3 others were never found, their final resting places lost to the vast Utah wilderness. David and Marcus Harmon were both convicted on multiple counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and assault. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the trial, psychologists testified that the brothers had been raised in an isolated, abusive household where their father had taught them that women were prey, objects to be hunted and dominated. It didn't excuse their actions, but it explained the origins of their darkness. Emma Caldwell and Rachel Donovan both survived their ordeals, though the scars, physical and psychological, would take years to heal. Emma returned to her studies, eventually completing her marine biology degree. She no longer hiked alone, but she refused to let fear steal her love of the outdoors. Rachel became an advocate for missing persons, working with law enforcement to improve search and rescue protocols and raise awareness about the dangers solo travelers face. Detective Sarah Vaughn received commendations for her bravery, but she never quite shook the images from that cave. The photographs of those women, each one someone's daughter, sister, friend, their lives cut short by 2 men who saw them as nothing more than game. But there was one photograph that haunted Vaughn more than the others. It had been found in Marcus Harmon's apartment, hidden in a locked drawer. It was a picture of a young woman, taken recently, within the last month. She was hiking somewhere in the Grand Canyon, her face turned toward the sun, smiling, completely unaware she was being watched. Beneath the photo was a handwritten note, "Next season." During interrogation, when Vaughn showed Marcus the photograph, his face remained blank. "Who is she?" Vaughn demanded. Marcus just smiled. "Insurance, detective. You got us. But our work inspired others. People who think like us, who see the world the way we do. You shut down our operation, but you can't stop what's coming. The game always continues." The FBI launched an investigation into Marcus's claim, searching for evidence of a larger network of predators targeting solo hikers. They found encrypted communications, dark web forums, coded messages. But nothing concrete, nothing they could act on. The woman in the photograph was never identified. Somewhere out there, she was still alive, still hiking, still unaware that she had been marked. 6 months after the Harmon brothers' conviction, another woman went missing from the Grand Canyon. Her name was Jennifer Reyes, age 27, an experienced hiker and nature photographer. Her camera was found abandoned on the South Rim Trail. The memory card was still inside. When investigators reviewed the photos, the final image made their blood run cold. It was a selfie Jennifer had taken, her smile bright, the canyon stretching behind her. But in the reflection of her sunglasses, barely visible, was the silhouette of a man. Watching. Detective Sarah Vaughn stood in her office, staring at that photograph, the case file of Jennifer Reyes spread across her desk. The Harmon brothers were in prison. They couldn't have taken Jennifer. But Marcus's words echoed in her mind, "The game always continues." Vaughn picked up her phone and dialed the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. When they answered, she said 4 words that would launch a nationwide manhunt: "We have another hunter." The Utah Backcountry stretched endlessly beyond her window, beautiful and deadly, holding secrets that might never be uncovered. And somewhere in that vast wilderness, someone was still playing the game. Still hunting. Still waiting for the next victim to wander into their trap. The case was closed. But the nightmare was far from over. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.